Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, and we're here with you today from the Today Show, broadcasting from the Disability Channel. Good morning, Dr. Ramin. How are you this morning?
Oh, good morning. Doing wonderful and glad to be back with you.
Well,
That's,
thank you.
yeah, it's
Thank you.
awesome.
Well, I thought it would be appropriate today because we dedicated Thursdays to special communities. And you and I just spent the last week up north with some very special people, some very special communities. And of course, we have a confidentiality clause and we don't share names or whatever. But we have had highlights from our week, and it was your first trip all the way from California to northern Canada. So let's talk a little bit about some of the insights you had just before we ever met our clients or anything, but just your general view of the North.
Yes, it was wonderful. I spent almost 11, 12 days. So obviously that was my third trip to Edmonton. I've been to Montreal and Toronto before, but I've never been to Saskatchewan and
Mhm.
North Country, and it was great experience, great drive. I tell you, driving the roads, it's wonderful. So, and I was really, I think I got personally lucky because the weather really accommodated us, and I had my boots. I was like, oh, ready for snow. I think it was in the 50s on last
Yeah.
Thursday, last week this time. I'm like, oh, put a t-shirt on, man, this is great. So very blessed. And of course, as you mentioned, for me, meeting these wonderful people, I mean, it was a great experience, spending almost 5 days, 4 full days, and the evenings, and almost 5 days meeting everyone. That was a great experience. And I think I learned a lot
Mhm.
from that experience, and it
Mhm.
opened a lot of doors as far as being the clarity to understand. And yes, I very much enjoyed. Yeah.
I'll tell you, it won't matter if we do 100 groups, they'll all be different, even though the baseline information is the same.
I'm having a little difficulty, Dr. Laurie.
Hearing me?
Yes, there's a
All
little
right.
delay. I don't
Mhm.
know if we should.
Let's see.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now I can see you. Okay, I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah. Now you're good. I
Okay.
don't know
All
where
right.
we're. Okay.
Sorry
Good.
about that. Little technical problem there. So I was just saying that if and when, well, we will be, if we facilitated 100 groups in that process, reclaiming my self-worth, even though the information is the same, the dynamics of the groups, each group would be different. Is
Absolutely.
that something you observed? And if so, what did you observe around the um, energy or the dynamics of the groups, because we did two groups.
Right. I mean, initially we had um, a combination of majority females with some males. And of course, with any new groups, there's a little hesitancy because this is very deep and they open up. They have no idea what they're getting into. But when they get out, they're completely changed. And I think some of them wish that was like the whole week instead of just 2 days. But especially with me as an outsider, I'm always been outside. Even my own country, I was a minority moving to the city, and then we moved to the United States. I came to the United States as a young age, and here I am. They're seeing, who's this guy, an immigrant from the United States? What does he understand about us? How can we trust him? So that was the first initial, and I don't blame them. I mean, that is a very, but amazingly, within few minutes, everything just fell in its place, and it was amazing. Like you mentioned, that the dynamics completely changed. Uh, but the major thing I noticed is the second group we worked with, the males. We had a large group of all of them were males, and it was interaction was very different. And I would have thought opening up emotionally would be difficult for men than women. But they were having fun, they were joking, and they were very trusting. And that is I think the biggest key, right? Everywhere we go, unfortunately, like you mentioned, we put masks on, we are never ourselves. And for like 48 hours, everyone felt it's okay. There was no judgment. I mean, imagine all these male energy going on, getting emotional and talking about the inner children, and it was amazing to see that. And that was, I think, was a big breakthrough. With our uh, majority are female groups, they have been open talking to moms or sisters or friends. They are better at that. Us males, sometimes we have this difficulty of speaking on intimate subjects about our feelings. And I was pleasantly surprised at how open the men were. And of course, we can never record these. You cannot even write about them. But if there was, it would be amazing breakthrough for their own communities to see how easily within 2 days you can completely change. And um, it was it was wonderful. And it was also again hearing their stories, and one of the best things was their aspirations. And that's what we live, right? We want to grow, and that's what living is, having a life. And at the end of the day, you could hear a lot of aspirations, whether it's about relationships, about the career, about growth. It's about careers. I mean, there was a lot of things. I think that was amazing, and opened many
Mhm.
doors. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we did ask them to give us a bit of feedback. And one of the things we asked them to do was to feedback to us, because I just quoted an elder friend of mine who's passed away now, Lillian Francis, but she told her grandchildren, when we want a happy life, we must first find new information to help us get there.
Hmm.
And so we have a list here of about 40 things that areas that we cover and that we facilitate. And I'm just going to hold this up so our viewers can see the number. There's no names on this. The number of check marks.
Hmm.
That's what you're talking about, Ramin. People want to grow. And so look at that. And they were all like that. Saving money, raising confident children, communicating effectively, discover and expand my gifts, honor, not regret my past. These are some of the things that were checked off. To grow spiritually, to get healthier, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And that, of course, is the medicine wheel. Make a difference in my community.
Hmm.
Wow, that's big. Parent more effectively. get into balance, start a business, manage and budget my money, make changes. I mean, gain financial freedom. These are all things that were checked off. And so that is proof right there that the groups that we worked with those 4 days, like you said, have aspirations. And I think it would be so respectful for that to be honored and have it covered. Yeah.
No,
Well, yeah, and well for me because I felt a little rusty because I haven't been in person since before COVID. And there were a few things that I forgot to do, and I got home and I went, "Oh my gosh, I didn't tell them that. I forgot to mention this. We didn't do that exercise," but I just went with what they needed. And so it was really fun for me. I had a lot of fun just, traveling with you and us having the car with no distractions so we could exchange ideas and communicate. And then we visited some friends and colleagues on the way. And then, we get to meet all these beautiful people. And so I was in my zone eventually, but at the very beginning, I did feel a little rusty and crusty, if you will, because I haven't been there for like 5 years. I can hardly believe that the aftermath of COVID has lasted 5 years in some cases. And they're just now getting comfortable having people come in and bringing people out of their communities. And yeah, so it was all very special that way for me. Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, I wouldn't have noticed that, Laurie. You were in the zone. You were like natural. I mean, again, we could not videotape it, but some of your acts, my God,
Oh,
you should be in the movies. It's like
well, I
you
think
were
I
like
was in my last life. I
having,
think I was in Hollywood.
you probably were. So, and it was interesting. The interaction with females was different than males. Although the first group we did have a few males, and they still were, even with females, they were open and they were very giving in the sense of sharing
Mm-hmm.
their past. But the most beautiful thing, at least for me, interacting with them, as you know, it was like individually, I would talk to them, and it was wonderful to let them know how much value their own information has, that sometimes they do not want to share it because they don't think it's valuable. And one of the things I learned about the culture, the language, I mean, I learned few Cree words, and it's beautiful. And that was, for me, was an education. So it goes both ways. So they have to value what they know, the culture, the language, the traditions that they've had. And that's what I learned. I learned quite a bit when they individually speak about, obviously, being in front of people, it is difficult. But by end of the day, they were very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
They could have gone on and
Yes,
speaking about these.
yes, and that's one of the things that I love to overcome right away. And so we've created exercises that get them out of the chair and up, because of course, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the greatest fear is standing up in front of people
Sure.
and talking. And so we do a little game that was kind of fun, and this educated us too. So everybody gets an index card with a question, and then they have to go up front and educate us. So
Mhm.
we did things like, what is a walleye, and what does a moose eat, and what is a powwow, what is a round dance, what does a red dress mean. So we incorporated cultural things in there, but the whole goal there was to have our clients educate each other on certain things, because some people don't know everything about everything, right? So
Correct.
that's an exercise I do to help people get up and get out and get in front of people. Um, yeah, it was fun. It was fun. We made it fun. So I was reviewing the feedback sheets, and we had 12 gentlemen, but out of the 12 gentlemen, uh, one of the questions is, what three former negative behaviors am I working on to change and to remove from my life? And 10 out of 12 had the word anger on there. And we talked about anger, as you know, and processed it a little bit. But I found that quite phenomenal that they had that there. And another one was forgiveness, asking for help, um, learning how to love myself, to stop blaming others. And when you mentioned about the value, not having placing value, I don't know about you, Ramin, but I'm very guilty of that.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, I don't realize my value and what I know and what I have to offer. And we all have this tendency to shy away. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it comes from, well, it's the upbringing, the cultural, and I know you have mentioned this before. You don't want to brag, the humility and humbleness, but there should be a healthy balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known many successful people, they do not brag because their action speaks a lot louder. Because I know many other people who they are their own megaphone, and they do one thing and they multiply it by 100, and they tell other people how great and wonderful they are. So it should be a healthy balance. It should be uh, accepted that we honor our own accomplishments, not brag about it, but let people know. And I've been very guilty of that. And a lot of times I'm very quiet. I don't like to talk a lot about what I've been doing, um, and be assumed like, oh, people should know. But well, you know what? By not sharing that, we are depriving others from our expertise, and that's a sin on its own. Right? You can mislead people in a way of your expertise. That's a big sin. But also not sharing what you have and what you know. I think that's another, I mean, equally the same problem, because you did not help your community, the people that you're in contact to become better, as long as it's real. I mean, I have to emphasize
Yeah.
that. So if you have that, why are we in this world? Why we came, and when we leave it, we should have made a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
if we didn't, then we didn't accomplish anything. So I think that's very important. And it goes back to, again, what I was learning from them. And I did go. And there was a couple of members. It was wonderful. They're sharing thousands of pictures. And, there's so much about moose. I've never had moose meat, for instance. But one of the things I learned, what like one of the questions you had, what moose eat, and that was a medicine plant and how it
Mm-hmm.
goes through them for healing. I mean, who would have known? My goodness,
I didn't know that.
that was an education right
Mm-hmm.
there. And other thing was, I don't know if I had shared before, my dad was a linguist. One of his degrees was in languages, and we would go to different places. He would travel internationally. He really wanted to revive the old Persian language before, the Islamic movement, when the Muslims, invaded Iran or Persia at that time. And I mean, I have probably 1,000 page, like a dictionary. I mean, a collection of
Mm.
old language. And so the language is very important in transferring your culture. And once you lose that, there goes your really history and culture, the storytelling. So one of the things I really enjoy learning the language. This is like a Cree. There's quite different
Mm-hmm.
types of Cree, but they have to honor that. It's wonderful to speak English. I mean, I speak few languages. I read few languages, but I still kept my mother language, and my children speak that. Um, Not perfectly, but my daughter does, but they understand. And that's how we can keep our culture. And I think that sometimes there's this shyness. And one of the best things you did in the practice You ask them if they want to share in their own language, which a lot of them never understood, but it's okay. It's okay.
Mhm.
Some of the things, like one thing I learned, in Cree language, there is no goodbye. There is no equivalent to goodbye. It's see you later, or because they don't believe in that. So they don't have that, but that's a cultural thing. It's a valuable thing to understand why, when they say "movestas" or "iwasa," that means later, and something like that was valuable for me. And I hope they will continue that, and let a lot of them, they said their children don't speak the language.
Mhm.
And I think it should be part of that. And I think one of the things you had mentioned, it was really funny. I think you had said there are few of these youngsters, or they go to university, they take classes to learn about their culture and their language. I mean, here there's Kukum, their grandmother, which they all respect, gathering them around and sharing this. They have that, but yet they have to go to university from, excuse the language, from someone who culturally, like white dude or what, who has not really experienced it, teaching them what to do. And I know, like for in Colombia and other universities in the United States, there's like all about like Iranian poetry. I mean, here is someone who grew up in the United States is teaching other people, which is wonderful, but they have not lived it. There is some of these philosophical, spiritual language that you cannot translate. It is something you really have to feel. We have, I know, in the Persian literature, is a beautiful spiritual poetry, and it's very difficult to translate that. So the same thing in our indigenous community. We have to honor that, and
Mhm.
not at the expense of something else. Not that saying, well, I don't want to learn English because no, it's education, right? So that's, we learn English, we learn French, but let's not forget about our culture and our language as well. So
Right.
honor that, not
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that came to mind while you were talking. And the first thing was, if you have information that could benefit someone else, you need to share it.
Hmm.
And, we have a lot of people now coming up on the podcast lines, and everybody's a podcaster and whatever, whatever. But I'm talking more intimately than that, within the framework of the family.
Yes.
And you've heard me share this story before about being at the grocery store, buying some meat, and these two young women with little babies in the cart. Their grocery cart was full of cans and boxes and frozen foods. And one of them looked to the other and said, there would be no point in me buying any of this meat because I wouldn't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
Well, that's a cookum or a mom or somebody, and not saying it's just to be the woman's job, but somebody didn't teach those girls how to cook. And now they have families that they need to cook for. But so what are they doing? They're filling their kids up with chemicals already.
Yes.
Because everything that comes in a box or a can or is processed, read the back. When you read the ingredients, it's like this long. And some of the words you can't even say. So I'm looking at the labels and going, if I can't pronounce it, I don't want to put it in my body.
Exactly.
Right. And then on the other hand, you have the cultural aspect where when one of our clients shared that moose eat the medicines as well as the fruit, the bark and the vegetation, I thought, wow. So that's why land-based education is very important to teach our young people, those things. So that was one thing that came up when you were talking about that. And languages. When I was in Taiwan, facilitating a similar group of people, a group of people. What's interesting is English was a second language, and most of them had learned it in school. They could write it and they could read it, but speaking it was more difficult, which of
Mhm.
course is. And of course, back to that, if we think we're going to make a mistake, We don't want to fail, so we choose not to. So
Correct.
sometimes when you're learning a new language, you have to practice, like if you're learning a new sport or the piano or something. So a lot of times when we're learning that, we're shy. But anyway, when I was there, I had an interpreter. Now, this is what's really interesting. If I was sharing something from the heart, and I told them about Lillian Francis, when I was sharing something from the heart, they did not need it translated. When I was sharing something from the mind, something technical or a statistic or data, they had to have it translated.
True. Right.
Isn't that amazing?
Right.
And I had that experience with, that culture. Yeah. Excuse me.
No, that's an excellent point. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, as you know, English is my fourth language, right? So, but the way I learned, I could write and I could read. But would you believe I learned my best conversational English for our 4 or 5 year old neighbors, children? They were the one because there's no judgment. So
Hmm.
they will talk and I would make a mistake and they would laugh and we will have fun. Now, if I would have sat in front of a professor and do that, oh my God, so I would never have would have
Right.
improved. And the other thing I learned, it was, I know a lot of our audience probably don't remember, but it was Mork and Mindy, Robin Williams. There was this TV show in the 70s and early 80s. And he was an alien who could not speak English.
Right.
And then I thought some of the things like he was saying is actually English, like nanu nanu and shazbat and all that. I go to school and people, the students will laugh at me, but they thought I was cute in a sense.
Yeah.
But just from that simplicity, the TV, the radio, or the young children taught me a lot more than a very uh, classic, in a way, of traditional English language that you learn from school. And it goes back exactly what you said. It's about the fear of, making mistakes, being judged. It's like, children are wonderful. They're actually great teachers.
Hmm.
They have patience. They're playful. You can learn a lot from that. They're not judgmental. They laugh at things. So it was really good.
Hmm.
So that's how I learned English, believe it or not.
Right.
And, so
And when I was very young, grade 1, I ended up the only school in the community where we were living at the time was northern Quebec, was a French Catholic convent. And I have a cute story about this. No offense to any Catholics who are viewing the show, but I was 6 and completely nobody spoke English.
mhm.
So I was bilingual in 3 months. That's all it took for me to become completely bilingual. Because children are, like you said, there's no judgment there. So they have no filters. So everything goes in and gets processed very easily and quickly. So when you're learning another language, or if you want to teach your children another language, do it before they're 6 or 7.
Yeah,
Start from day 1 and, just go for it, because they can learn up to as many languages as they want. Right.
absolutely.
So I'm coming home at night now, Catholic convent setting. We all had to go to mass every morning. And I was gifted this little set of blue prayer beads. One of the sisters gave them to me. And we're white Anglo-Saxon Protestants from the East Coast. And at night, I would lay down or kneel down to do my prayers, and I would be, working my beads. And I was, Hail Marys en français. And my dad, I guess, was wringing his hands and saying, "Oh my gosh, I just love that she's learning how to speak French. I'm a little nervous about the Catholic thing, however, because, back in the 50s, that was another way to divide people, was how they voted and what church they went to. And this would be if you were all white, you could still be divided by religion and politics. And so, yes, language is a big barrier for a lot of people. And English Has to be the most difficult language in the world to learn. All right, so let's go back to our feedback sheets. Another question we asked was, let me see. I love the questions because they didn't really know how to what to expect, I guess. So I said, name 3 things you want to make happen for yourself when you return home. Because to me, let's talk a little bit, Ramin, about implementation and application and the importance of that when you are learning. Now, when you go to a speaker, and we talked about this the other day on our show, when you go to a speaker or you hear a speaker, you retain about 2% of the information. When it's facilitated the way we did it, the retention rate goes way up. So, and a big part of that is we teach a concept, and then I won't say even teach, we share a concept, and then they have a chance to practice it right there. So that's a big feature. So listen to this. 3 things I want to make happen when I return home. I want to talk to my kids about their problems. I want to take better care of myself. That's called results, because now I'm going to take the information I learned and put it into action. So what do you have to say about that? Let me just read a couple more. 3 things I want to make happen: to be more compassionate, less talking, more listening, and to be grateful more often for what I have. I like this one. Learn to stop being hard on myself. Gee, that's a good one for you and I. Focus on my journey. Don't get upset as often, right? So, yes, implementation and application. That all learning should provide that opportunity for us to practice. And that's one of the big features of what we do and why it's life altering.
No, absolutely. I think that is um, so important. And that's, I think, one of the problems I have. And we've talked many times about the social media. You mentioned about podcasters, about TikTok, people coming and they all have this little tidbit, advice. And a lot of time, these advices are very contradictory. One day they say one thing, and the next day it's completely different. So, as an audience, we don't know which part. So, we have this conflict of understanding. And again, my field being mostly in finance and especially investing and trading, my God, talking about confusion, it's more about luck than actually understanding. It's the beginner's luck. So a lot of people, well, they make money, they buy the cryptocurrency, and the things work out. They think they're genius, or somebody comes and tells them. They think, but nobody has really fundamentally has learned that what it takes. So once we learn things from within and it's touch, it stays with us for the rest of our lives. We can be on a boat and still make a decision. We can be in an island. We can be in Antarctica, and anywhere in the world. We can apply that knowledge rather than being really dependent on the information constantly coming at us from different sources. So it's about understanding those information and how to analyze them rather than just copycatting them. And I think I would say 80-90% of people or speakers, they've learned the concept, they've memorized it, they've gone to school and they learned a simple box. The same thing like in marketing, in sales, they know just specific things. And unfortunately, when they go outside that box, they're frozen because they never learned it from really fundamentally. And this same thing applies to the workshops that we offer, is about really touching inner side of ourselves and really believing and making that difference, not as a outside cover or mask, but rather from within. And that self-care was very important. That's how important that is. They admitting that they are going to take care of themselves. That is huge. I mean, I have difficulty with that, rewarding myself. I think, well, if you do something good or something right, you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, you're not supposed to reward it for that. What do I mean?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in some of the societies, I'm from California. There's a lot of physical and material rewards. So because you kick a ball, oh, this is wonderful. Let's give them a award. Well, no, life doesn't work that way either. So they should be again happy balance. We cannot be hard on ourselves, but also you cannot reward every little things because our new generations they think that's how it will be, and unfortunately they get a lot of disappointments when the reality hits them. And that's what I think in our last show I mentioned. There's a big difference between wisdom and intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and that wisdom I think is what guides our lives, and that's why we should honor that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I'm a numbers person, and so are you. So we like numbers. And I want to just say, I'm not even going to be shy about it. Our clients have to evaluate at the end of their feedback. I mean, it's like a 4 or 5 page feedback, but they have to give us scores. And numbers don't lie. I just know that much about numbers. So things that we have our clients evaluate are things like number one, was the content of the workshop meaningful and relevant? Well, if you go to something and it's not meaningful or relevant, you'll never get that time back. You just
Mhm.
wasted two
Yeah.
days. And I've often said if I get off the phone with somebody after a long phone call or whatever, I'll say to myself, well, that's an hour I can't get back,
Yeah.
right? Can always get your money back, but you can't ever get your time back. Ease of understanding of the concepts, especially when you've got multi languages involved. And that's why I share with our clients, if your mother tongue is more comfortable for you to share how you're feeling, oftentimes it is our mother tongue that we can express those things more easily. So I always encourage, regardless of what the language is, that people use their own language, but ease of understanding the concepts. I had fun. Well, for some people, this work is not fun, but most people said they had fun because we had enough trust and relaxation that people could go and actually make fun of a situation they were in. Because when you can laugh about it, that's healing. When you
Yeah.
can look back at something that was really traumatic at the time, and now you can look back and kind of chuckle, that means that you've healed from that. The facilitator was professional and knowledgeable. The environment, my needs were met physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. I mean, who asks you that? We do. I received value for the time spent. And if somebody put money out of their own pocket to pay for it, I'll ask them if they received value for their time and money that they've spent. I feel I'm making progress. I would like to do more of this type of work on myself. And I'm leaving refreshed and renewed. And I'm sorry, but most of the pages have those numbers.
Mhm.
And we just scored straight tens. Well, a skater or a dancer loves to see those scores. 10, 10, 10, right? So, why is it important, Ramin, for us to be able to measure what we do? Why is that so valuable?
First of all, our human nature, because we like to see where we've been and where we are going. And when there's a physical things, I know I'm standing here and next minute I'm there. So we have been really programmed to see our progress, and numbers play a big role. So when there is a conversation, for instance, you and I have, how do we measure that? We measure it probably, like you mentioned about the time. Did I learn something new? Was this time was something that we shared that could benefit someone? When we put, because again, our upbringing, our education, the numbers allow us to see that again, the measurements of knowing that there is an improvement, we are going the right direction. Also, if there is something that is not the right way, it's a lot easier to see from 1 to 10 at 5 than just saying, how was it? Oh, it was great. It was good. Yeah, I mean, it's vocabulary, it's more of an emotional feedback. When you put a number, it's more of a logical and emotional. So that logic has to think. Your brain is analyzing and evaluating. So rather than just immediately say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm feeling I had a good day," but I say, "Well, from 1 to 10, how good of a day are you having?" All of a sudden, you see there's like 3. Oh, wait a minute. What happened? What
Yeah.
kind of? So that's when we find out. Oh, wait a minute. There's something wrong in here. You're not having a good day. Tell me about it. So I think that's why, and also again, when you the education system is about grades, everything is about numbers. So we have been programmed that way. So, and it's a lot easier to see things. I like time is valuable, so it's good to see rather than
Mhm.
writing 10
Mhm.
different essays, how was the thing. So I think,
Yeah. And I think another way for us to measure is we always ask, would you recommend this to others? Is
mhm,
this something you'd feel comfortable? Because as you know, uh, if you're in business, a lot of our business relies on referrals, but people can still have a great experience, but that doesn't make them a referring person. So they have to
mhm,
feel really confident that if they bring a friend to you or a family member,
right.
that they're going to be treated with respect and properly and so on. So we always ask, would you recommend this to others? And so people have said, definitely, yes. My sister needs this. My mom needs this. My kids. I had one feedback. She wanted all of her children, adult children, in the process. So that's also another way to measure whether or not our clients have had a good experience, is if they would be, oh yeah, tell others about it. Because the best way, the most credible way to build a build anything is to have other people helping you do that by being ambassadors or referral people. And
Right.
not everybody will do that, even though they've had a great experience. Even on our shows, I've asked, please share the show. Our team members, please share the show. And it's amazing how people don't. It's, if you're going to click like, click share. It's the same activity. One just has better results than the other, right? So, referrals, recommendations, and that was very nice to see. And one of our clients said, the reason I would recommend it to others is because none of this information came out of a textbook. It came out of Laurie, real life experience. And that brings up the topic, the difference between credentials and credibility. I mean, it's great to have both. And I think we all have both. But I don't pull from the credentials. I'm pulling from my own stories, my own history, and my experiences. And that's why the connection and the trust can happen. But you see, a lot of people don't want to do that because they feel exposed if I tell somebody that I was divorced or I was sexually assaulted or, uh, you know, that it's their secret. And so the longer we keep the secrets, again, back to what you said, we're not really helping anybody because by me sharing my secrets, that empowered them to know they weren't alone.
Mhm.
And don't we all feel alone when the what hits the fan and we're sitting here crying in our beer and we think we're the only person that this could have ever happened to or who feels this way,
Right.
right? And that comment was made also that this experience helped me to understand that I am not alone. My coworkers have been through the same thing or feel the same way. And then what it does corporately or professionally, it brings teams of people together because maybe they didn't like a certain person on their team, but then when they realize what they've been through or what they've experienced, the compassion comes out. And all of a sudden, I'm talking to that person that I haven't bothered with because I didn't really like them very much. Right? So, corporately, uh, having our people work on their personal stuff allows them to be more productive, create better teams. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree, and I think you hit the point as far as some of the co-workers understanding the roots. It's so important, and that's where the empathy comes, not just the sympathy. And they understand, and it's funny how all of a sudden all these fog and clouds go away. The sun is shining because now we see, oh, a week ago, 10 weeks ago, he was behaving or she was behaving this way. Oh, now I know why. And that brings me to the story of Stephen Covey, late Stephen Covey, that the Seven Habits of Venture People. He shares a story I probably have shared in the past, but it is very important because it's relevant with what you said. There's this father on the subway with four children, and these four children just acting out. They're loud. They're just doing, they're just pretty loud, and sometimes maybe some people think obnoxious. And finally, this woman comes to him and says, "What? Can't you control your children? What kind of a dad are you?" He says, "Yeah, I totally appreciate what you're saying. But we're just coming from hospital. Their mom just had cancer and she just passed away, and they don't know how to handle it." So just by explaining that, all of a sudden, we become very accepting. We can see, oh, wait a minute. Yes, that is, how could a 7-year-old or 8-year-old accept they just lost their mom? So I think these classes, like it's precisely you mentioned, when we share some of the things that has happened to us, it's amazing how the bonding gets stronger. And as bad as that experience was, we do not judge that person because we have a newer information. Right before, we would have maybe even avoided them, but now we have understanding. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, we have been programmed not to be ourselves, not to share things, or some people, they just feel so victimized, they're just victim all the time, that now we try to avoid them because they're constantly complaining about things,
Mm-hmm.
that they're saying how
Mm-hmm.
bad things are. And then we just say, well, I don't want to hear it. But here, I think that accountability is important. The lack of, thinking that we are victim all the time, but also understanding, like again, you precisely mentioned, we are not the only one with those problems. It's amazing. We talked about there's 8.2 billion people. We share similar problems. A loss of a child is painful. I don't care what zone of the world, what region you live in. It's very difficult to accept that. The pain is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are, as a human beings, we have very similar, um, again, pains, sufferings, joys, happiness, laughter. So we are not very different from each other, just a
No.
different faces, different colors, maybe, but we are all the same.
Well, you've heard me say this before that feelings are universal.
Mhm.
And we all have that part of us that gets to feel. And there's no division there. There's no boundary there. It's like suicide. I always say it knows no boundaries.
Yeah.
Neither does abuse. It doesn't have to, it has nothing to do with your socioeconomic. It might be more prevalent in certain communities, but the bottom line is it exists everywhere. And I believe also too, and I'll just say this, um, we can listen to other people's stories, which helps us not to feel alone. However, we took it a step further by saying, here's a toolkit. Here are some tools that you could practice at home right away, and they get to feel the instant result.
Mhm.
Whereas we talked about the other day, reading a book or listening to a podcast or whatever, there's no no accountability there. There's nobody saying, well, wait a minute now, you're in denial, or maybe you need to see that differently or look at it through different eyes. And that's what makes things a little different. We talked a little bit about this on our finance show on Tuesday, but this show I wanted to dedicate because on Thursdays it's special communities. And this is a very special community that we got to be a part of last week. And while it's still fresh in our mind, I thought it was extremely appropriate
Right.
for us to do this today on our VIP show. So thank you so much for joining me today. And is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers? And we can sign off.
No, I'm just very grateful to have had a chance. As you know, we've been working on a mission. We really want to help our communities, and it's been our, at least for past year and a half, really when I joined you, that was, and Grand Chief, we want to the betterment because there's just so much value there, and there's just so much of honor and dignity there. There's just a lot of stories to be shared, and it was really nice to be in a company of these special people in a way that it was pretty intimate and understanding their pains as well as their joys. I mean, as I said, one of the couple of members, they're just sharing their pictures and photos. They were so honored. They were so happy to do that. Well, there's a joy also there, but there's, unfortunately, we hear a lot about the pain because they have no place to go, because they've all been the same, unfortunately, the same bubble together. So, here and there, somebody, an expert comes in from outside for 2 hours, lectures them, tells them, oh, you should do this, and leaves. And they all think that this has to really, it will change everything. It doesn't work that way. You really need programs like this in person, in depth, to make a difference. And I could, I was witnessing that. And I wish there would be more communities to see the value of that. It's the fear of unknown and being exposed in a way of being vulnerable, and
Yes.
feel what somebody will take advantage of our vulnerability, which there comes that trust. That's a trusting environment,
Absolutely.
safe environment, like you say. That's such an important thing. Yeah.
Well, it's number one. You don't have the safety, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So, like I'm from oil country, and all the oil companies have safety rules, and the trucking companies have safety rules, and we have safety rules. So that's very important. All right. Well, Ramin, we'll talk to you later. And
Yeah.
thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers today and anybody who watches this. Hopefully, it has supported you with you learning more about what it is that we do and also the people that we want to support. So, which is everybody, actually.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of work to do, man. All right. Okay. So, bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Talk to you later.